Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So today we are going to continue on with our DCS Liberation tutorial. And so today we're going to talk about how to create our first campaign, as well as talk about a little bit on how the campaign piece works a little bit in terms of the settings. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to go ahead and go to the top left up here and click New Game. And this is going to create a new game wizard. So we'll just go ahead and click Next here. And the first thing that we're going to see is a whole host of installed campaigns. Now you can download more. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But these are the campaigns that are supported and come with your installation. So we have everything from the Caucasus, the Falklands, we've got Marianas, Nevada, Normandy, Persian Gulf, Syria, the Channel, and they span a whole different set of time zone or time frames, right? So the Falklands looks like 2005, China 2010. If I look at like the Channel, this is World War II, and so you can go ahead and take a look at all the different components yourself. But it's important to note that they are optimized for certain types of aircraft. So if we look at something like Syria Battle for Golan Heights, you'll notice that it has a performance impact metric, it has the author as well as what the campaign is about. We have map settings here, and then we also have time period settings here. So you can say that you want to use a preset, you can select your own date, it doesn't really matter. And then, so if we look at this one here, you'll also see from a performance impact that it's 1 out of 3, which means that it you can get away with a less powerful computer. But if you look at something like the full map of Syria, this is really quite the big deal in terms of performance, and so you may have to set up some settings to combat that. We're going to go ahead and select this so that we can talk about some of those settings. So we'll go ahead and just click Next and leave everything as it is. Next is our player factions and enemy factions. So these are completely up to you to select or leave as they are. If you want to create your own factions, there is a guide right here you can click on, and we'll talk about that in a future video. But you can see what the aircraft that you would have available to you are. You can see what your frontline units are, artillery units, and then air defenses. And it's the same with the enemy faction. And there are a whole host of different factions that you can choose from. Everything from World War II to the early Cold War to modern is available. We'll go ahead and leave these as they are and go ahead and click Next. Next is I guess these are kind of like options that affect the generation of the missions in the game. So you can say like, hey, I don't want aircraft carriers. You can say that you don't want an LHA. If you want to use a super carrier, which I have, so we'll go ahead and click that we do want to use super carrier. And then you can tell it you don't want a navy or you do want navies, and then you select your desired mission duration. I recommend setting this to 30 because I get things going a little bit better. This may actually be different. So, with version 6, I don't know if this has changed, but in version 5, if you didn't set it to 30, there was a little bit more spacing out of the takeoff times, and you could potentially be in a situation where you would take off and then there would be no one airborne, and you basically could go bomb the other guys before they even took off. So that's why we're going to set to 30. Mod settings, so these are the official, in quotes, approved mods. And when I say approved, I just mean supported. So if you wanted to use a Skyhawk or the Raptor, Starfighter, etc., you can go ahead and select, turn these on this way. You have to have them installed. This doesn't come with those mods, so if you don't have them installed and you select this, it's not going to do anything for you, except make it so you can't play. Potentially, because if I selected that I want to use Raptor and the Skyhawk and I don't have these installed, the missions probably will say that I have to have the F-22 Raptor and the Skyhawk, and if I don't, then it won't let me play. So go ahead and click Next. Economy options, pretty straightforward. How much income do you want to have? So you can max it out, or you could say like none, or you could say that the enemy is not going to make any money, but you are, or vice versa. Starting budget, this will determine how many units you can purchase at the beginning. I like to just go all the way to the right so that we have a very interesting setup. And then player assist, so you can do runways, automate the runway repairs, frontline purchases, and aircraft purchases. Totally up to you if you want to do this. We are only going to, for the sake of this tutorial, we're only going to select automate runway repairs so that we can learn how to do these other things. But if you don't really feel like it and you just kind of want to have everything done for you, you can go ahead and select all three. And we click finish. All right, so next is the Airwing configuration, and it's important to take a look at this because this is the only time that you're going to be able to do this. So with Liberation 6.0, as well as Liberation 5.0 and onwards, I guess, you had individual squadrons which would be assigned to individual bases, such as the, it would either be like the aircraft carrier or an airbase or whatever, right? And you can only spawn, or I guess create these at that particular base based on where they're assigned. Now, this has already gone ahead and tried to provision things for you. So if we look at the F-18 Hornet, we notice that its default base here is the Stennis, which is just code for whatever the aircraft carrier is. If you have Super Hornet, it will be the Super Hornet module. If it's not the Super Hornet, it won't be. It's got the VFA number. It's got the nickname of it. If you want to, you can put your name in here, which means that will be a pilot that you can select because each squadron has a set number of pilots. So I would always recommend adding one, or you can, in a pinch, you can actually just, there's a checkbox on package creation, which is the, sending out the aircraft, to make a character a player. But it's easier if you just put in your name. So we'll leave these all as they are, but for instance, let's say that you're like, I really want a non-carrier based Hornet. You could totally do that. You could be like, okay, well, I can either select, here, or you could say, I'm going to add a squadron. I'm going to add an F-18 Hornet, and I want it at Encirclic, and I'm going to be the werewolves. It doesn't matter for this preset. This is just going to change the skin and the name. Accept, and then if we scroll down here, we'll see that the werewolves are here, and I want my character here. That's all it is. Do the same thing for a Tomcat, just for fun. Okay, cool. 16, where are they? Okay, cool. And we'll put myself. M.Chimiste. Yep, cool. All right, so we'll go ahead and just accept these changes. And we are presented now with the map. So this is the campaign map. There's a lot going on here. So the blue units are us. The red units are the baddies. You'll notice that we have a whole host of different symbology here. This little symbol here is a SAM site. This here is a ammo depot. And then you will also see, so these are all SAM sites here. Do they have any? Zoom in here. So this here would be a power plant, this little light bulb. This here is a oil pump. These are tanks. It looks like a little, I don't know, like a factory. And then there also are warehouses. Is that a warehouse? I believe this might be a warehouse. This is a tech combine. This little circle thing are units. This is an early warning radar system here, this little circle here with the little zigzaggy line. And then this little red thing with the circle, that is an airbase. I don't know if they have any fobs in this one. This little X guy here is a fob. And so that's kind of what your symbology is. That's an oil platform. This is radio tower. If you just scroll over it, it'll tell you. So we won't belabor this point, but if you hit these different units, like oil platforms or these hangars or the ammunition depots, it will impact the economy of the bad guy, or you if they hit yours, right? You have an oil platform, so if they hit your oil platforms, that will impact the amount of money that you have in subsequent terms. These orange lines here are our front lines. They will move forward or backwards based on how well we perform. If we perform poorly, our front line does poorly, and the baddies do well, it will move closer to us. If we do better, then it will move closer to them. And there's different defensive structures or just defensive postures or offensive that you have to pick. You have frontline operations here. You can be either aggressive, you can be breakthrough, elimination, ambush, or defensive. I recommend breakthrough most times. It may be different. We'll tentatively try it. But typically if you're defensive, it won't move very far. If you go retreat, obviously you will retreat. Breakthrough basically means that they'll push through. Elimination you should avoid because elimination is very slow. Basically what ends up happening is you try to destroy every single bad guy. So it can be a very slow forward progress. Breakthrough usually is good because they will attack what they can and they will continue to kind of like push through. Next, let's look at a couple of the settings really quick before we get into unit purchases, which we'll probably move to the next video because this one might get long. Go into settings. Some important things that you may want to be aware of as you are setting up your missions. So, AI difficulty. This one's kind of important. The default difficulty is not set very high. So this, if you're a new player, that's great. You can probably leave it the way that it is and you'll be in good shape. However, if you're a more advanced player, you've been playing around a little bit, you may want to bump these up to the highest levels simply because otherwise the AI might be really stupid. So personally, I like to just set everyone to excellent. And that'll get pretty much the AI on the Ace AI, as opposed to like Novice or something like that. Player pilots cannot be killed. I just leave that checked. I like manpads on the front lines, and if you don't want night missions, you can check this box and it will remove night missions. In-game labels, map visibility options, external views, easy communication, battle damage assessment. These are all things that you can configure and enforce. I'm going to leave them as the defaults. Campaign management. So there's a couple of things here that you can change. So like, let's say that you wanted to try to use, weapons by certain dates, restrict them by a date frame. You can use the work in progress thing here, but the data is incomplete. So if you do that and there's a weapon that's there that shouldn't be, oh well. There's also the ability to spawn an invulnerable, always available AWACS and tankers, but these are deprecated. They'll go away eventually. We're not going to use any of these options. Pilots and squadrons, we're going to keep this pilot leveling set. Number of pilots, I'm going to set this to 20. And then replenishment rate, I'm going to leave it 4. You can have pilot limits, but it's work in progress. I'm not going to bother with it. And then again, if you wanted to enable or disable frontline purchases or aircraft purchases, you can do it here. Automatic package planning behavior. So if you did have automatic aircraft purchases and what have you, you could say I want to prefer player pilots, never assign player pilots, no preference, etc. In our case, it doesn't matter because we're going to be creating our own packages. Automatically generated packages with players or schedules ASAP. Yeah, that's a good one to have if you are using automated aircraft purchases. Automatically managed frontline stances. That's also a good one to have in general, but we're going to be modifying that as we go. But we'll leave it checked. Mission generator is the next tab. So this one's new. Fast forward mission to first contact. If enabled, the mission will be generated at the first point of contact. So basically, they're going to look at all the different package times, and then wherever they guess the first contact is where they're going to generate that mission and then provide it to you. So this is brand new. Why don't we try it for fun? Just for funsies to see how that how it goes. I know that they're moving closer more towards a like a Falcon 4.0 or Falcon BMS type campaign where it's real time, but I don't think they're quite there yet. Player missions interrupt fast forward. Determines what player mission states will interrupt fast forward to first contact if enabled. If never is selected, missions will not impact simulation and player missions will be generated mid-flight. So for instance, if we are the first contact, we will be in cockpit, flying over whatever objective, and that's where the mission will start. If not, then it's gonna break. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say a startup time, so that we always have the ability to just kind of get going. Auto-resolve combat during fast forward, we're going to leave that off, but this will kind of help auto-resolve different combat situations as they occur in the background. This is not part of DCS. This is 100% part of Liberation. We're not going to worry about that. Supercarrier, we're going to use it. Put objective markers on the map. Yep, sure. Generate dark knee board. This is for night missions. This is for like a player pilot. I'm not worried about it. I'm going to leave it off. Player flights ignore time on target and spawn immediately. Does not adjust package waypoint times. Should not be used if players have runway or in-air starts. So typically I select this, but since we're doing player missions will interrupt fast forward, we're gonna keep it unselected temporarily as a thing. But it's best to usually just say like, yeah. Actually, we'll just click it. But yeah, so it means that when you start the game and you select your spot, that you don't get we're sorry, your aircraft flight has been delayed and you're going to have to wait. And you'll literally just sit there in a spectator mode for however long it takes for it to start. So check that one. Default start for AI aircraft cold. You can change this. I recommend cold because in that way you can target the aircraft on the ground if you're going to do like a aircraft mission or like an OCA mission. Desired mission duration, we already talked about that. These are a little bit important for performance. Your mileage may vary. One that I suggest always turning on is culling of distant units. This one basically is, wherever we are on the map, if it's beyond 100 kilometers, we're not going to spawn in units. And that just helps reduce the number of units that the poor CPU has to keep track of. However, if you make sure to say don't call carrier surroundings and do not call threatening IADs, basically that means that your SAM systems and if there was like an enemy carrier, they're not going to like remove all of those components so that you can kind of game the system. So it kind of solves some of that. It's not perfect, but the reason that I'm going to do this is a big map with a lot of stuff. So if we don't do this, we could have really bad frame rate. Other things that you may want to look at is you can turn off smoke visual effects to save performance if you need to. You can change this to have more or less smoke. You can turn off artillery strikes if you want. You could turn off moving ground units. I'm going to turn off generate carcasses for units destroyed in previous turns because then it's just less stuff on the map. You can also tell it to turn off generating infantry squads alongside vehicles. So this would be kind of like mechanized infantry. I'm going to keep it on because I like the idea, but if you run into performance issues, go ahead and turn it off. If we move on, these are Lua plugins. You're going to get CTLD and Skynet IADs automatically. I recommend splash damage and early warning radar systems. I leave everything else off. Never use the C-130 or the LOT ATC. So not 100% how they work, but I know that the C-130 is for a mod, which I don't have. Lua plugin options. These are additional options. So CTLD, basically what it's going to do is they're going to have like a JTAC that is auto lasing and will pop smoke on the target for you. So if you wanted to use a bunch of Flaming Cliffs 3 stuff, you could say, okay, I want you to use the 1113 code as opposed to the 1688 code, so that you can continue to drop laser guided bombs on the JTAC targets without doing your own lasing, right? You can buddy laze off the JTAC. If you're going to be doing sling loading, you can select this, or as well as creating spawns for airlift. And then you can tell it to turn off smoke or turn it on, or to tell the JTAG not to use smoke or to use it. For Skynet, you can create it for red, blue. You can have the radio menu set up where you can turn things off. And then for a lot of ATC export, you can do different things here. I don't usually use those. So we're going to go ahead and close this. And then a couple of things that we can also orient ourselves on here on this user interface. You will see at the top, just underneath the toolbar here, factions. So who you are, who the bad guys are, what turn you're on, so the date and the time. And it's important to pay attention because if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be a night mission. Also the weather, whether it's clear, raining, not raining, whatever, your current budget, as well as how much money you're making each turn, and your intelligence. So your intelligence is that right now no one's bought anything, so we don't know what the frontliner air superiority looks like, but from an economic strength perspective, they've got a lot more stuff than us, so we're at a strong disadvantage. Miscellaneous, we can do Airwings. So for instance, if you had a bunch of these UH-1H helicopters and you had a new, let's say that we took Abu al-Dahur, you could move them. You could say, hey, I want to look at these guys and we want them to transfer to a different area. But it will take one turn to do so. It also tells you all of your squadrons that you have. Inventory, it'll tell you all the inventory when we actually have some. And then from transfers, if we were moving frontline units or units from different areas via like a convoy, it's going to tell you all of that information here. So that's a lot. I'm going to end it here, and we'll see you just a moment in the next tutorial for building out your first mission. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.